My name was Ozan. I was a Quran teacher in a conservative town in Turkey, respected, disciplined, and trapped. In a world where silence dominated and tradition was law, I led my students through the sacred verses, believing I was illuminating their paths. But deep inside, a darkness festered, a relentless emptiness that I dared not speak of. Every prayer felt like a hollow echo, each recitation a reminder of my own confinement. Then, everything changed in a heartbeat. One fateful night, a devastating accident stole my breath, and perhaps my soul. In that suspended space between life and death, I found myself in a void, engulfed by despair. And yet amidst the shadows, a radiant light emerged, piercing through my agony. It called my name, Ozan. It was Jesus, not the figure I had been taught to scorn, but a being of pure love and revelation. In his presence, the veils of deception fell away, exposing the ruthless spiritual war woven into the very fabric of human belief. I saw how my faith had been twisted, manipulated into a weapon for fear and control, betraying the true essence of what I longed for, a genuine connection with the divine. The realization hit me with the force of a tempest. I had served a system, not God. I awoke to a world where belief could either bind us or set us free, and my heart raced with the urgent truth I had discovered. Emerging from that dark chasm, I faced the storm of my shattered reality. My family turned their backs on me. Friends became strangers. I was deemed a heretic, cast out into the abyss of loneliness and guilt. Yet within that suffocating silence, my spirit ignited with a quest for truth. I sought solace in the pages of the Bible, whispering prayerfully as I found community among others who had walked this path, a community that shared my hunger for freedom and understanding. If you feel the weight of spiritual chains, you are not alone. Others are waking up, sensing the call to break free. Join me on this journey. Leave a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? I want to connect with your story, and if you resonate with the message of transformation and love, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Together, we'll unearth the profound revelations waiting just beyond the veil. In the heart of a conservative Turkish city, my life revolved around the rigid walls of an Islamic school, where every corner echoed with the recitation of the Quran. I was a teacher, imparting lessons that shaped young minds, steeped in tradition, honor, and the weight of expectation. The atmosphere was thick with reverential silence, every student acutely aware of the immense pressure to adhere to the teachings that had been passed down through generations. There was beauty in our beliefs, yet an invisible burden weighed on all of us, a tension that simmered beneath the surface, whispering doubts that few dared to acknowledge. It was during a routine lesson, teaching the finer points of our sacred texts, that everything changed. As I spoke, something stirred within me, an unsettling feeling that compelled me to look beyond the words on the page. Suddenly, I was gripped by a vision that pulled me from the classroom. This was no ordinary moment. I felt my surroundings fade away, replaced by an otherworldly brightness that enveloped me like a warm embrace. In that ethereal light, I found myself face to face with Jesus, a figure I had only heard of but never understood. His gaze pierced through my doubts and illuminated the very essence of my spirit. In his presence, a flood of revelations washed over me. I felt the walls of tradition crumble around me, revealing deeper truths hidden beneath our teachings. Jesus spoke, not in condemnation, but with a love and urgency that transcended my understanding. The burdens I had carried, of obligation, fear, and the need to conform, began to lift as he revealed the underlying deception that had seeped into our faith. The spiritual war that raged around us was not merely ideological, but a battle for the souls of humanity, manipulated by the elite seeking to maintain control through division and fear. I could hardly process the magnitude of what I was experiencing, but I felt the weight of urgency pushing me to seek greater truths and break free from the chains of ignorance. As the visions continued, I glimpsed the fractures within society, the wars, the poverty, the divisions that bred hatred and unrest among us. I saw how leaders exploited our beliefs, wielding them as weapons to perpetuate their agendas, all while masking themselves behind veils of righteousness. The realization struck me with profound clarity. Many of us were blindly following paths that had been paved by others, leading us away from the truth. The love and grace that Jesus embodied represented a way out, a bridge to healing and awakening that could unite fractured lives and spirits. In that moment, I understood that my life's work as a teacher needed to evolve. I was called to be more than an instructor of doctrine. I needed to be a herald of truth and awakening. As the encounter drew to a close, I felt a powerful surge of determination coursing through me. I couldn't simply return to my life as it was. I had been transformed, reshaped by the revelations I had received. The fear of facing my community, of being labeled an outsider or a heretic, was eclipsed by the great need to share what I had encountered. I resolved that this experience must reach those who remained lost in the shadows of deception. I envisioned small gatherings where we could discuss not just doctrine, but the living reality of Jesus, breaking free from the constraints of tradition that had long stifled our spiritual growth. With each passing day, the sense of urgency grew within me, pressing me toward action. I yearned to reach those students who sat silently in my classroom, their hearts filled with potential, yet burdened by the weight of expectations. As I prepared to share my story, I felt both exhilaration and fear, knowing that the path ahead would not be easy. Yet I had the truth on my side, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my calling hinged upon my willingness to step into the unknown. I knew that the journey ahead was fraught with challenges, but the love of Jesus and the hope of awakening would guide me through the darkness that lay beyond the walls of the school, beckoning me toward a deeper understanding of faith and freedom. My life as a Quran teacher in a conservative community had always seemed clear-cut. I was respected, viewed as a moral leader and guide. Yet beneath the surface, I was gripped by a profound sense of conflict. Inside, I felt hollow, anxious about the disconnection between the teachings I imparted and the gnawing emptiness that echoed through my soul. As I stood in front of my students, passionately sharing the verses that were supposed to illuminate our lives, I struggled with my own spiritual void. I began to question everything I had accepted without hesitation for so long. Every day felt like a battle, an unyielding struggle to adhere to the strict traditions that surrounded me. While my community placed immense pressure on me to embody righteousness, I could feel a dark cloud of anxiety looming overhead. The rigid expectations clashed with a longing for something deeper, something more transformative. I yearned to understand the truths hidden behind the surface of what we were taught. However, fear of questioning established norms gnawed at me. I kept pushing down my concerns, convincing myself that faith was about acceptance, not inquiry. Yet, the unresolved tension began to consume my thoughts, leaving me restless. One evening, after yet another long day of teaching, I collapsed into bed, physically drained and spiritually hollow. As I slipped into unconsciousness, the chaos of my life faded, giving way to an extraordinary experience. I found myself in darkness, but then, like a spark igniting a flame, a blinding light illuminated the void. In that radiance stood Jesus, his presence enveloping me in a warmth and love I had never known. I felt known in a way that transcended my earthly relationships. It pierced through my being and revealed the depths of my soul. As I gazed at him, a torrent of revelations washed over me. Jesus spoke directly to my heart, revealing the layers of deception that had thickened over the years. I saw visions of a world divided by strife and confusion, manipulated by powerful elites whose hidden agendas aimed to keep humanity in chains. The spiritual war was laid bare before me. It was more than a conflict between faiths. It was a battle for truth itself. I suddenly understood the extent of the manipulation that was pervasive in society, how fear was used to control the masses, and how critical it was that I awakened from my slumber of complacency. With each insight, I felt my disillusionment dissolve into a powerful resolve. As Jesus shared his wisdom, the truth poured into my heart, igniting a fire within me that I could no longer ignore. I knew I was called to be an agent of change, to share the divine messages of love, compassion, and awakening. I saw the faces of my students, the families in my community, all ensnared by the limitations imposed upon us, and a sense of urgency surged through me. The path ahead would not be simple. It required boldness to confront the very fabric of my beliefs and to lead others toward their own awakening. I realized that this revelation was not just for me. It was a mandate to illuminate the shadows with truth, and I was determined to answer that call. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself increasingly disconnected during prayers. Each time I knelt in reverence, seeking solace in the familiar verses of the Quran, a haunting emptiness gnawed at my soul. I could hear the words falling from my lips, yet they felt like distant echoes, devoid of meaning or conviction. The sense of fulfillment I once felt was being replaced with an unsettling silence, a void that I could no longer ignore. My spirit screamed for answers, but the questions remained trapped beneath a surface of practiced obedience. I wrestled with the fear that my faith, which had been my guiding light, was now steeped in doubt. Disturbing dreams began to plague my nights, haunting me with visions that felt all too real. In these dreams, the foundations of my beliefs crumbled before my eyes, replaced by an overwhelming sense of manipulation and control. I saw leaders puppeteering their followers, cloaked in righteousness, their true motives masked by a facade of faith. Each morning, I would awaken drenched in sweat, heart racing, grappling with the revelations that struck like lightning. The dreams were more than mere nightmares. They were warnings, revealing the hidden agendas that pervaded the very fabric of our religious teachings. Deep within me, an internal struggle ensued. I longed to confront those thoughts, yet the fear of being ostracized loomed large. How could I question the very doctrines that my community revered? I felt like a pariah, teetering on the edge of a chasm that threatened to consume me. The pressures of my position as a Quran teacher intensified the weight of my doubt. While I stood before my students, conveying lessons meant to inspire faith, I found myself battling an unsettling conflict. The more I delved into my dreams, the more I scrutinized my teachings, peeling back layers of deception that had long clouded my perspective. Then came the night of my near-death experience. It was sudden and unexpected, a health crisis that caught me completely off guard. Lying in a hospital bed, struggling to breathe, I felt a darkness closing in around me. In that moment of despair, as I hovered between life and death, I was drawn into a radiant light that eclipsed the shadows. Jesus appeared before me, a figure of infinite compassion and wisdom. His presence enveloped me in a warmth that felt like home. It was a love that transcended earthly understanding. I was filled with a sense of peace that calmed the turmoil in my heart. And as I gazed upon him, the truth began to unravel before me. In that sacred moment, I received powerful revelations. Jesus spoke of the spiritual war that raged around us, how powerful elites manipulated faith for their gain, fostering division and conflict to maintain control over the masses. He revealed the layers of deception that clouded my understanding, encouraging me to seek the deeper truths that lay hidden beneath the surface. I felt a renewed sense of purpose igniting within me, pushing me to awaken from the slumber of complacency. Each revelation was a call to action, urging me to share the truth not just within my community but with the world at large. I began to grasp the gravity of my calling, to stand firm against the lies that bind us and illuminate the path of awakening that Jesus had shown me. As the visions faded and I returned to my body, the weight of what I had experienced hung heavily on my heart. I felt different, transformed by the encounters that had reshaped my understanding of faith and spirituality. There was no going back to the life I had known. It was time to embrace the truth and share the awakening that had been gifted to me. But I also understood that this would come with its own set of challenges. How could I begin to unravel the tight-knit fabric of beliefs that had been woven around me? I was filled with a sense of urgency, compelled to start speaking the truth I had witnessed, despite the fear of rejection and ostracism that awaited me. The journey ahead would not be easy, but the flame of revelation burned bright within me, leading me toward a new chapter marked by courage and bold faith. It was one fateful night when everything changed. I was driving home from a meeting at the school, lost in my thoughts about the lessons I would teach the next day when it happened. A sudden collision that sent everything spiraling into darkness. The impact was instantaneous, and in a matter of seconds, my world went silent. I remember feeling a weightlessness wash over me, as if my body had been cast aside while my spirit drifted into an incomprehensible void. That's when I entered a realm far removed from the chaos I had just left behind. A desolate landscape shrouded in shadows, where every whisper of the wind carried a sense of urgency and despair. In that stark emptiness, I found myself grappling with a profound sense of isolation. I wandered, feeling the echoes of my thoughts resonate through the silence. It was then that I encountered a luminous figure, a radiant light that pierced through the darkness with a warmth so familiar it brought tears to my eyes. Jesus stood before me, his presence enveloping me in an embrace of unconditional love. He called my name, and in that moment, everything shifted. I felt seen, heard, and understood in ways I had never experienced on earth. His eyes held the weight of truth, and I was flooded with revelations that unraveled the very core of my beliefs. Jesus began to show me the intricate threads of a spiritual war, the manipulation wielded by those in power, the elite who utilized religion as a tool for control. I saw visions of oppressed individuals, their spirits crushed beneath the weight of dogma and deception. Each flashing image revealed how faith had been twisted and weaponized, turning devotion into compliance, rendering the masses powerless. I understood that the beauty of belief had become a breeding ground for division, a hidden agenda cloaked in piety, leading people away from the true essence of love and connection. The urgency of his message pushed at the very fabric of my understanding, compelling me to confront the realities I had long ignored. The deeper I sank into these revelations, the more I realized that many of us walked through life blissfully unaware of the battles waged in the spiritual realm. Those harmful ideologies masked as righteousness bred an environment where conflict thrived, where wars were justified by the mere flicker of religious fervor. With every vision, the manipulation grew clearer, how leaders capitalize on fear and obedience, perpetuating cycles of violence and division for their gain. I felt compelled to wake from my own slumber, to lift the veil obscuring the truth, not just for myself, but for those who had yet to comprehend the deception. As Jesus spoke, I felt my heart igniting with a fierce resolve. No longer could I accept the status quo. I was being called to share these profound truths with the world. There were people out there, students, friends, family, who needed to hear about the love and awakening I had encountered. But the fear of rejection loomed over me. How could I challenge their perceptions, upend the teachings we held sacred? What if they turned their backs on me? Yet the weight of my experience became a catalyst, a fire fueling my spirit. I understood that I had a purpose transcending my own discomfort. Just as these thoughts solidified, I felt a pull, ushering me back to my physical body. Awaking in the hospital room, the sterile environment was a stark contrast to the luminous world I had just left. I realized with each heartbeat that I had been given a second chance, not merely to continue my life as it was, but to usher in a new awakening for others. I would no longer be a passive observer in the spiritual war. I would be an active participant, wielding the truth as a beacon against the darkness that threatened to engulf us all. I felt the urgency of my mission pulse within me, an unwavering call to step forward and embrace the road ahead. As I opened my eyes, the sterile walls of the hospital room greeted me, but the warmth of Jesus' presence still lingered in my heart. However, the moment I left that cocoon of divine solace and returned to reality, I was met with a chilling truth. My family and community, once my bedrock, now regarded me as a heretic, their faces twisted in anger and disappointment. I felt the weight of rejection wrap around me like a suffocating shroud. Paranoia clawed at my insides as I grappled with my new identity, a man branded for seeking truth, for awakening to what had long been hidden behind veils of deception. The initial shock morphed into profound isolation. Each conversation felt fraught with tension, each glance a silent accusation. The community I had devoted my life to turned hostile, as if my revelations threatened their very foundation. I felt as though I was caught in a spiritual war, fighting not against external enemies, but the very beliefs I had once embraced. The guilt clawed at me. How could I challenge the teachings that had shaped my entire existence? The fear of losing everything, a family, a sense of belonging, and the respect of my peers, plunged me deeper into turmoil. In those dark moments, I often recalled the love Jesus had shown me. His voice echoed in my mind, urging me to stand firm against the hidden agenda designed to keep us in bondage. Yet despite that strength, the loneliness grew unbearable. I began to isolate myself even further, retreating from family gatherings and community events. The laughter of others felt like daggers, reminding me of what I had sacrificed for the truth. I wished desperately for understanding, but the divide between my awakening and their adherence to tradition felt insurmountable. I turned to prayer, but it felt different now. My cries were no longer for guidance, but for reassurance. I questioned my path. Was I meant to endure this suffering? Would the truth I had uncovered ultimately lead to my ruin? Tension built within me, and I started to realize that the spiritual war I faced was real and brutal. Clinging to the hope of Jesus' promise, I sought solace in Scripture, searching for messages of resilience among the verses. The teachings of love and compassion began to resonate anew within me, illuminating the way forward amidst the darkness that threatened to consume my spirit. One evening, after a particularly painful confrontation with my family, I knelt in prayer, tears streaming down my face. I begged for clarity, for a sign that my suffering had purpose. It was then I felt a shift in the atmosphere around me. That familiar warmth washed over me again, as if Jesus himself was embracing me. That moment, I understood that this journey was not merely about me. It was about awakening others, dispelling the lies that had bound us. The urgency of my mission solidified within me, and I knew that despite the cost to my heart, I had to be the voice of truth, no matter the consequences. A determination swelled up inside, propelling me forward into the unknown, ready to face any challenge that awaited me on this path of awakening. In the depths of my turmoil, I found myself urgently seeking solace. The weight of my spiritual conflict pressed heavily on my chest, making it difficult to breathe, and I felt an overwhelming need to explore paths I had once deemed forbidden. One evening, under the cover of darkness, I began a secret journey, navigating the pages of the Bible and absorbing the testimonies of those who had walked a similar road of conversion to Christianity. Hidden from the eyes of my community, I delved into these narratives, feeling a connection with others who had found their way through the murky waters of confusion and doubt. As I read their stories, I discovered a small, supportive community that resonated with my struggles, a group that shared experiences of awakening amidst the unseen shackles of tradition. With every page, I felt the stirrings of peace that had eluded me for so long. It was as if the words washed over me like a gentle rain, soothing my spirit, while simultaneously igniting a fire within me. Jesus' teachings echoed with a clarity that cut through the fog of deception that had clouded my mind. I began to see the hidden agenda of control that permeated the very fabric of the beliefs I'd held dear. In those moments of reflection, the revelation of how religions had often been manipulated for power became glaringly apparent. It wasn't just a personal awakening. It was a universal truth that demanded to be acknowledged. I felt both exhilaration and fear. The exhilaration came from the discovery of a deeper truth that spoke to my very soul, illuminating the shadows that had clouded my understanding of spirituality. But with that joy came an intense fear of losing my identity, losing my family, and being branded a traitor in my own community. The risks loomed heavily. Yet, lying in bed at night, the peace I sensed in these new teachings entangled with my fears, fueling my resolve to embrace this awakening. I instinctively knew that the spiritual war I faced wasn't merely a battle against external conflict. It was a profound, internal struggle that warranted my attention and action. As I connected with this supportive community, I felt a growing strength swell within me. Each phone call, each message exchanged, fortified my spirit. I listened to stories of transformation, of lives changed by accepting the love of Jesus, and stepping away from the constraints that had long suffocated their potential. I learned how many had faced similar crossroads, the moral dilemmas that had to be navigated with faith and courage. I felt inspired to share my own awakening, to illuminate the truths I had uncovered. There was urgency in my heart. Time was slipping away as societal tensions mounted around me. I recognized that the tides of history were shifting, and to remain silent meant allowing the spiritual war to continue unabated. Yet, the dichotomy of my present reality gnawed at me. Each day in the classroom returned me to the environment that had once felt like home, now clouded with fear and uncertainty. As I taught, the very words I recited began to feel heavy, burdened with the implications of my internal conflict. My students looked at me with reverence, but I felt unworthy of that admiration, caught between the truth of my experience and the facade I had built. The urgency of the awakening ignited my passion, driving me to sow seeds of truth cautiously among them. I realized that to educate them was to potentially awaken them to their own trials, setting off a chain reaction that could lead to their liberation. Ultimately, the choice lay before me. I could tether myself to safety and conformity, or I could embrace the truth that had been laid bare before my eyes. As the days passed, the tension built within me, a potent mix of anticipation and anxiety, as I contemplated my next steps. The reality of the spiritual war was palpable, the stakes were high, and the necessity of my voice had never been clearer. I felt the weight of my mission pressing down, a clarion call to rise above the fear and embrace the journey ahead. With every beat of my heart, I prepared to step boldly into the unknown, driven by the revelations that had changed me and compelled me to share the light I had found. In the wake of my profound experience, a deep sense of urgency settled in my heart. I realized my encounter with Jesus was not simply a personal revelation. It was a calling to awaken others to the truths I had uncovered. My life, once centered around teaching the Quran, transformed into a mission to reveal the deceptions woven into the fabric of our beliefs. The idea that I might evade the weight of this responsibility began to dissipate. I felt compelled to speak out about the spiritual war that was consuming our society, one that wielded religion as a weapon for manipulation and control, perpetuated by those in the elite who thrived on ignorance and division. Every moment that passed without action felt like a betrayal of the love and truth I had encountered. I envisioned the faces of my students, innocent and impressionable, and it pained me to think of them being ensnared by a hidden agenda that clouded their understanding of spirituality. I could no longer remain silent, while the very teachings I had once upheld perpetuated deception. My resolve grew stronger as I recognized the urgency to confront the system that had once confined me and those around me. I knew the risks involved: rejection, animosity, and possibly even violence. But the drive to speak out overshadowed my fears. I began to reach out to others, those who might share in my experience or recognize their own spiritual battles. I sought connections within a growing community of believers who had also encountered Jesus in their darkest hours. Sharing our testimonies ignited a fire of hope and truth within us. We formed small gatherings where we could speak freely, exchanging stories of awakening and rebellion against the dogmas that sought to stifle our souls. In those meetings, I found a sense of solidarity, a shared understanding that we were engaged in a spiritual war far more significant than any one of us could face alone. Here, the truth flourished, thriving in the light where deception could not persist. As I prepared to confront those I once held dear, I felt a powerful mix of fear and determination. The thought of standing before my family and community, sharing the revelations I had so deeply internalized, was daunting. I was no longer just a Quran teacher. I had transformed into a messenger of truth, ready to challenge the constraints of tradition and the silence that had held me captive. I contemplated the impact my words might have, both healing and dividing. But I recognized that to remain silent would only perpetuate the cycle of ignorance and deception. My heart raced at the thought of unveiling the manipulation behind the teachings we had accepted as gospel. One evening, as I gathered my courage to speak, I remembered Jesus' presence during my near-death experience, the warmth and love that enveloped me. It was a reminder that the truth was powerful, and when wielded with compassion, could penetrate even the hardest of hearts. Armed with hope, I stepped into that room filled with familiar faces, ready to share my journey and the urgent message of awakening. I understood that each word would either be met with resistance or lead to an opening of hearts, and in that delicate moment, I chose to take a leap of faith. The spiritual war demanded warriors who would speak truth to power, and I was prepared to stand firm, knowing that this was just the beginning of my journey toward liberation, not only for myself, but for those still shackled by deception and lies. In a symbolic act of bravery, I decided to shed my old life. It was a desperate move, a necessary sacrifice in my journey toward spiritual liberation. I changed my name, turning away from the identity that had been imposed on me by family and community. With every letter of my former name, I felt I was relinquishing the ties that had bound me to a belief system that no longer resonated with my newfound understanding. This was not just about changing a label, it was about transforming my existence, about breaking free from the chains of a hidden agenda that had long kept me in the darkness of deception. As I crossed the boundaries of my former community, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. Each step away from the familiar echoed with the lessons I had learned, and, with each heartbeat, I propelled myself further into the unknown. Yet that freedom came at a cost. The anxiety of being branded a heretic haunted me, knowing that I had chosen a path that could lead to ridicule, isolation, or even violence. My heart ached for my family, for the friends I had left behind, who still clung to the beliefs that had once engulfed me. But the truth I had encountered was so profound, so liberating, that I knew I could not return to a life dictated by fear and conformity. The weight of my decision pushed me to seek out others who shared a similar yearning for awakening. I began to spread the truth to anyone willing to listen. Those who had, like me, felt the stirring of doubt, the sense that something was fundamentally wrong. I recalled the teachings of Jesus, the messages of love, compassion, and liberation that pierced through the noise of societal expectations. It became my mission to confront the spiritual war that raged around us, a battle fought, not with weapons but with words and the undeniable truth that emerged from my revelations. Building connections with others became a source of strength. I listened intently to their stories of fear and hope, their own journeys through the darkness of deception. Every conversation was a reminder of the urgency to awaken the masses from their slumber, to challenge the narrative that had been carefully constructed by those in power, the elite who thrived on division and conflict. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, fueled by the knowledge that we were not alone in this fight. Together, we could shine a light on the hidden agendas that sought to keep us imprisoned, turning our suffering into a shared beacon of hope. Yet, the journey was fraught with challenges. As I confronted the responses of those from my past, I felt the sting of rejection and misunderstanding. Those who had once embraced my teachings were now my critics, casting judgment upon me for daring to question the status quo. But with every wave of hostility, I felt my resolve strengthen. I was armed with the revelation of truth, ready to stand firm against the tide of fear and ignorance. It became clear to me that this was not merely my personal battle. It was a collective awakening, a movement toward understanding that could set countless souls free. With each step, I moved closer to the calling deep within me, a mission to share the love of Jesus and the truths he revealed, opening doors for others to experience the profound freedom I had been gifted. Now that you've journeyed with me through these layers of revelation, I must leave you with a weighty question. Have you ever felt lost in a belief that kept you shackled, yet sensed deep down that there's something greater yearning for your awakening? It's a question that echoes through the corridors of our souls, one that could be the beginning of your own transformational path. In the light of my experience, it's clear to me that we are living in an extraordinary moment, an age where the spiritual war rages not just around us, but within us. The veils of manipulation are being lifted, revealing the truth that, while painful, is profoundly liberating. You are part of this cosmic fight for clarity and love, a significant player amidst the chaos. Do you feel the urgency of this moment? Your voice matters. Your story matters. Please, I invite you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. What spiritual awakenings have you encountered? Have you faced the daunting reality of changing your beliefs in a community that demands conformity? Your words could resonate with someone else, igniting further discussions and shedding light on shared struggles. And if this message resonates with you, if it ignites a spark within your soul, don't forget to subscribe to Truth from Beyond and activate the notification bell. It's crucial, not just for you, but for all of us who seek to unravel the truth together. The next topic will explore promises to reveal even deeper insights into the nature of faith, love, and awakening. Thank you for being here. I'm Ozan, and I appreciate your presence on this journey. Remember, the path of truth is a winding road, but it leads to a destination of freedom and profound understanding. Until next time, stay brave and keep seeking.